Welcome back to another episode of For the Record. We are down here in the Georgetown office. We are not in session this week. We're going to be heading back into session next week.
Yeah,
it
should be interesting going back. So, we're on a 2-week break for Easter. So, I know a lot of members of the General Assembly have gone on trips and stuff with family and are out of the area. So, kind of ready and we're raring to get back. Yeah.
So before we get started, I know, I'm ready to get back. We're getting close to June now, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I know,
this is
I
May
know.
1st is that we're recording, so the year seems to be flying by. Mm-hmm. But if you're watching this, from left to right, we got Senator Brian Pettyjohn, our Chief of Staff, who's getting over a sickness of some sort.
And you're really close to her, so hopefully that's, you notice I'm a little bit further away.
That is true.
Yeah. I'm not contagious
Well, I'll get out.
Yeah.
Anyway, Deanna Killen. Are you feeling better?
I'm feeling much better. My voice is a little
raspy.
Yeah, so just ignore that. Hopefully it'll last for the whole podcast. If not, you guys can take it away.
Well, we're kind of rushing because, she was doing all this talking before we actually, started recording. I'm like, Deanna, why don't you just be quiet? Let's get on. Let's, make sure
they tell me that all the time. Deanna, just be quiet.
we basically had an episode recorded. Then, of course, I'm Matt Rebel, Communications Director. So, Deanna, why don't you
and
kick it off
over here, out of frame.
Oh,
You
yes.
got to let everybody, because you might hear the voice,
Christy Wright, our Policy Director.
Mm-hmm. Happy to be in Sussex County.
Yeah,
That's right. So, what we got, Deanna?
We got quite a bit of things this week. We had talked on one of the past episodes about the Del fee package.
Yeah.
That did come out this week. Representative Morrison and Senator Pinckney are the sponsors. Gives a list of all of the increases that are being proposed. I don't know if we want to go over those or not, but this does affect everyone, so I think it might be.
Yeah, that's something we should talk about.
Yeah. So
but before we talk,
yes,
is there a gas tax in there?
Not here.
Okay.
But there have been rumors that we might see a separate bill for that.
Right.
But we have not seen it as of yet.
Okay.
So there is a one-time setup fee for a nonprofit organization to create a special license plate. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of license plate bills that come through the General Assembly.
We do, yeah.
Increase the fee for insurance and renewal of a driver's license. So if you have to renew your driver's license, it's currently $40. It's going to be increasing to $50.
How long is that good for?
My last one was good for quite a while because mine expired over COVID. And if I'm not mistaken, I think my expiration date is 2028.
Okay. I'll just kind of take a look here. Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah. Increase the fee for a sex offender registration license replacement from $5 to $10.
10 years.
10 years, okay.
10 years, yeah.
Increase the issuance and renewal of a commercial driver's license from 48 to 55. Looks like to me pretty much everything across the board is increasing about $5 to $10. I did see that they were going to be, the increase in document fee from 4.25% to 5.25%. I thought at some point someone had mentioned there was going to be an increase for electric vehicles.
There should be an electric vehicle surcharge for plug-in.
Yeah, I think it was just sent around for co-sponsorship. It hasn't been.
Okay, so that's not in here.
Yesterday, actually.
I thought that was in there.
Maybe it is. Maybe I just missed it somehow.
Okay.
So, yep.
Yeah.
So
and look, I think we should be doing something with electric vehicles.
Right.
With gasoline and diesel vehicles, they pay fuel tax.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what goes in the transportation trust fund. Of course, a plug-in vehicle, full electric vehicle, they don't pay any of that.
Right.
I'm kind of calling it the usage tax, really. Right. So
it really should be higher, in my opinion, because they don't all of that money goes into the fund to help maintain our roads, and right now they're not having to pay a lot of that.
Right. So the vehicles are heavier too normally. So
yeah, it's true.
It's more wear and tear on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not paying that fuel tax. So yeah, they need to be paying something. There was talk about possibly a mileage tax for them. But I think the fee that they came up with, I thought it was like $150 or something like that a year.
Mileage tax makes me a little nervous because how are they going to track that?
I mean, it would have to be something either self-reported, or they would have to go into the vehicle to the lane and have it documented somehow.
Yeah.
So I'm not
as
sure. How
long
they
as
would
it's
do
not some type, because the program that we had, the pilot program we had several years ago, wasn't that almost like a GPS thing?
Yes.
See, I don't like that.
It was a plug into the OBD2 port, and it had a little cellular chip in there, and would transmit that data every so often.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Government
that's a
has
little
no
bit too
business
Big Brother
in
to me.
knowing exactly where I go and what I do.
Yeah, I think it was in the synopsis. It just says this act, I'd have to read the whole bill, but this act assesses an additional registration fee for owners of electric motor vehicles,
Okay.
plug-in electric motor vehicles, and other fuel motor vehicles.
All right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that will be coming out at some point. I believe it was just sent around for co-sponsorship. Am I
Yeah,
correct
yeah.
on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
So
right.
it
Yeah,
does
it's
not
sent
have a
out,
bill number yet.
Tuesday for
So we
co-sponsorship.
don't have a bill number yet for that, but I would imagine that's probably going to be a priority. So I fully expect to see this up for a vote in the House and the Senate before June 30th.
Yeah,
I'd
it
be
is,
surprised if not.
Representative Moore says it'll be a House bill. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that topic?
No, just you need to keep watching it. There it is, line 7576. $75 per year for a plug-in electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid. It looks like,
Okay.
and then $100 per year. No, plug-in electric vehicle $175 per year. But if it's a heavier vehicle over 6,000 pounds but less than 10,000, it is $100 per year.
Okay.
And then, $600 per year if it's over 26,000 pounds. So I guess those electric semi-truck type things.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or commercial type vehicle. So,
Right.
they need to be paying something. $75 or $75 a year, I still don't think is enough for that. But we'll keep track of this as it goes through the General Assembly.
And since we're on the topic of electric vehicles, let's go ahead and discuss that, the electric
Yeah.
vehicle mandate.
Yeah.
The bill that you actually introduced last year, SB 96.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Where basically would have done away with the electric car mandate, which 90% of the public did not want, but DENREC.
92.6, I think,
Yes.
percent. Yeah.
So I found it interesting that Spotlight Delaware did a piece where Senator Hansen and our new DENREC Secretary Patterson were talking, and basically they were questioning and were concerned about the mandate of 43% for new cars
Yeah.
to be sold at our dealers by 2027. Of course, they're blaming it on tariffs and all of that type
They're
of
blaming
thing.
it on tariffs.
Yes.
They're blaming it on the elimination of the federal credits
Right.
that are out there.
And we know that there were concerns about this way back when all of this was passed, and the auto dealers came out. This isn't possible.
No.
But they didn't listen. So now, hey, they have an easy out. Let's blame tariffs.
Yeah. So, a couple things. If you know, I don't know if you saw Maryland, Governor Wes Moore signed an executive order about their electric vehicle mandate,
did
which
not
is
see
the
that.
same. They haven't repealed it, but Governor Moore said, well, we're not going to enforce it. So the regulation's still on the books. They're not going to enforce it with the fines and all that other stuff that they would fine the manufacturers for not complying with it. So,
Right.
They're kind of pausing it without officially pausing it. They're pausing the enforcement of it. So that's what Maryland's looking to do. There was an article, I think WHYY put something out yesterday that they said Governor Meyer doesn't support it. So
Right.
we'll see what happens. But I plan on reintroducing what was Senate Bill 96 last General Assembly.
Are you going to do that this year?
Probably I'm going to get a couple co-sponsors this week or this coming week, and then release it. Yeah. So hopefully that will be out here very soon with a new bill number. We'll discuss it next week during the podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about Governor Meyer, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Out on the campaign trail, I think last January 2024, I forget what paper it was in. It was either Cape Gazette or Coastal Point. It was one of the downstate ones. He was quoted as saying he did not support it, and if he got elected, that he was going to repeal it. So kudos to him. Now, I mean, we have to. I'd like to see it to believe it, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But
I do think
definitely sounds like we're on the right track there.
Yeah, he seems to be pretty consistent in that messaging that he doesn't like government interfering with the market. So we'll see if that holds true. But I assume that would have to be an act of legislation. That's not something the governor can just do on his own. Is that correct?
No, I mean, remember, it was a regulation.
Yeah.
So he can direct.
So he can do this just by
yeah.
redirecting a regulation.
Yeah, I mean, they can redraft a regulation. Again, the regulation was put in at the direction of Governor Carney to Secretary Garvin to do
Right.
it. So the same thing could happen, and he could withdraw that.
Would it have to go through the entire regulatory process
Yes.
again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're changing the regulation. So
Yeah, it's true.
Administrative Procedures Act, I mean,
Can't
it
just
goes through the
nix
whole
it.
process.
But this is why people think it's a joke, because it did go through the Administrative Procedures Act last time.
Yeah.
The public overwhelmingly didn't want it,
And they did
but
it
they didn't
instead.
care.
But see, you got to remember what they did. You know, the original regulation was it was going to go up to 100% and then stay there. I think the redone regulation pulled it back to, I think, 84% or 86%, and then the following year took it away. So you had to go up to 86% sales 2035, and then 2036. There is no more regulation on it. So you could sell 0% at that point in time. Again,
I still
which
don't
I think
think
is a
people
joke.
would support it because
I don't think so either, no.
Nobody wants to be told. Like, I think electric vehicles are cool. I personally would probably purchase one, but I
love
want
a
to.
Cybertruck.
Yeah,
Oh,
but I want to do that because I want to do it. I don't want to be told or mandated to have to do it.
You know, sometimes I wish I had a dash cam. I was heading up to an event in Newcastle on Tuesday, and on Route 1 there was a Tesla that was being loaded on the back of a flatbed truck with another Tesla behind it. So don't know what happened, if the Tesla battery failed or what, but somebody had to call a tow truck to get the Tesla, and it was, of course, you know, a diesel tow truck.
Yeah,
But
of course.
you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, if somebody wants it, and I have no problem if somebody wants to buy one. I have no problems with electric vehicles. I think for many people they're great, but we shouldn't be told that, oh, sorry, we've gone through our allotment of gasoline vehicles. The only thing we can sell you on the lot here is an electric vehicle, and you're like,
Right.
really? I don't want one.
Yeah, especially at a time when we're concerned about our energy grid reliability.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What
That's.
happened with Spain?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, grid collapse over there. So, I mean, it's a real problem. And I think as things happen in other places, whether it's things domestically or internationally, you know, we need to bring these up as part of the conversation as, you know, hey, look what happened over here. You know,
Yeah.
what are we doing to prevent that from happening? Are we going down the same road? And if we are we going to expect the same type of, of reaction of consequences to those things?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much, because I've never really researched it, how much charging an electric car adds to an electric bill. Do either of you know? Is it significant, or is it just?
I
is
don't
it
know. Yeah.
not
I
significant?
think, well, so a couple of years ago, I looked into it because when they first announced the Cybertruck, I was like, oh, let's,
I can see you in
let's
the
look into this.
Cybertruck.
I don't think it was that much annually. It was definitely less than what you would be paying in gas. But of course, the upfront cost of the vehicle is going to be much higher. So assuming you have to take out a loan, I mean, it kind of almost balanced out. It might, I think if I recall, it was slightly less per month. So I would have been saving money. But granted, that was,
But then,
like I said, a few years ago.
yeah, but that, you know, was assuming that you weren't going to pay any type of road tax too.
That's right.
You know, so adding the
Yeah, that's
$75 or whatever that might be, you know, we'll see how that kind of evens out. But, you know, of course, that depends on where you live too. You know, if you're in Delmarva Power territory versus the co-op versus one of the municipalities, you know, your rates can vary, you know, drastically.
So it's generally $30 to $35 per month.
Okay, that's actually okay.
Not horrible. Yeah.
No, it's a little more than I thought, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people get an electric vehicle. Well, I think some are concerned about the environment, but I do think overall it's to reduce costs. And you know, now that they're starting to do this with a registration fee and other things, it's I don't know how cost effective it's going to be in the long run.
No, you know, and you know, there are a lot of pros to, you know, electric vehicles. You don't have to worry about oil changes. You know, you still have to worry about, you know, your joints and stuff like that on there that have to be serviced, but you don't have to worry about the oil change. You don't have to worry about, you know, coolant changing, you know, a lot of those other things. But, you know, again, you know, I don't have a problem personally with an electric vehicle. It's the mandate that the government puts out that you have to use it.
Right.
That's the only thing that's going to be out there for sale. That's what I have a big problem with.
Right. Oh no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think there's also something happening in Congress too. I think the U.S. House today or tomorrow, sometime here soon, is going to be voting on a piece of legislation that will cancel California's waiver for the Clean Air Act, or whatever it is that allows them to do the advanced clean car too.
Right.
So, and I know there's some issues over there right now. The Senate parliamentarian has ruled that because it wasn't an actual regulation, that the Senate shouldn't vote on it. But I have a feeling that if it passes the House, which from what I'm hearing, there's actually some bipartisan support for it, it would be hard for the Senate not to take that up and actually vote on it as well. So, a lot of it might depend on what happens over in DC as well. If they pull that waiver that California
It's kind
has.
of a moot point then.
I mean, then
They already rescinded it 15 hours ago, 4 hours ago.
okay, then it's probably over to the Senate now. Then, yeah, okay,
In the House was 231 to 191 to revoke a waiver that permitted California.
that's bipartisan.
Yeah, a lot of,
There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's what, like 10, 15 Democrats voted
Yeah.
for it.
Uh-huh.
Assuming every Republican did, which
Right.
I'm sure they did. But
Yeah.
okay.
But so it'll be over to the Senate, and we'll see. Again, the parliamentarian over there said that that's something that they technically can't take up, but we'll see if they override the parliamentarian and take that piece of legislation up.
Senator Thune might have something to say about
He
that.
might. Yeah, I know. So,
All right, and speaking of electricity rates, let's go right into House Bill 116
Okay.
that Senator or Representative Heffernan is sponsoring. What this bill does, it allows Delaware's Public Service Commission to approve a 20% discount on utility distribution rates
yes, that's
for
great.
low-income households.
Oh.
But you're paying for it, Brian.
But I'm paying for it.
Yes. So basically what it's going to do is cost will be distributed amongst all the other ratepayers. And I feel like we're just,
So we're
There
going
are-
to subsidize.
exactly.
Now, what are they considering low income on this bill?
I'm assuming they're going to go by the federal guidelines, but I'd have to look it up to be specific.
What's the bill number?
HB 116.
HB 116.
And I feel like low-income households, they already have a lot of programs available to them. Catholic charities, they have a lot of programs that help them offset these types of bills. And the middle class, we're just piling more and more onto the middle class all the time. And when is it going to stop? Because it's starting to become a problem, and we're hearing it a lot from middle class families. Are like, where's our help?
Right.
And now here again, now this cost is going to be distributed to the middle class again.
Well, middle class, higher income earners and businesses as well.
Right.
And businesses that, look, Delaware has fallen in rank in terms of business friendliness here over the last few years. So here's another thing for business.
We talked
Ranked
about
46. I
Yeah, we
believe.
talked
Yeah.
about that last week.
46th to
46th
fifth,
in business friendliness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're, additional burdens on them. And again, it's redistribution. Why should I be paying for somebody's, wanting to keep their house at 80 degrees during the winter or 65 degrees during the summer? I mean,
Right.
that's not on me. There's times in my household that I have to make adjustments and sacrifices, turn up, make it a little bit cooler during the winter, put sweatpants on and a sweatshirt instead of walking around in shorts.
Right.
I don't know. It's one of those things where personal responsibility is kind of going by the wayside, and the government says, "Oh, we'll take care of you. We'll take care of those problems for you."
It's more than going by the wayside. It's gone.
It says eligibility for the low income under this section will be determined by the electric or gas utility.
Okay.
So we would have to
Interesting.
go to them.
Huh.
So I'm not sure if they could hear Christy, but it's going to be determined by the electric or gas utility. The low income will be determined by them. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
But it does say that the program will be deferred and recovered through a surcharge applied to all customer classes, including middle class households and small businesses. So way to go, Delaware. We're just knocking it out of the park.
And this is sponsored by Representative Heffernan. Who do we have that
Who is the
sponsors?
Senate sponsor on that, Christy? HB 116.
Pardee, Hansen.
Okay, none of those
And we've
surprise
also
me.
got Cruz and Hoffner as co-sponsors on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. It's got the speaker is on there as a prime. I think that's our 10-minute timer. Sorry.
All right, Governor Meyer.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, go ahead. I mean,
Okay.
do you have anything to add to the HB 116
No, well,
before?
I got a lot to say about that.
I'll let Brian take the lead on this next topic.
So, we have a little group text going, and I guess there was some controversy, I guess, around the port expansion task force that was held yesterday.
Yeah, and there's been a little bit of back and forth between the Senate and the governor on this issue anyway, with as far as nominees go. So that's just a little bit of a backstory on that.
Yeah.
Senate Democrats. but
Senate
Senate
Democrats,
Democrats.
yes.
Yeah.
We're
just enjoying watching it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, so there was a port expansion task force that was passed before we went on break, and they had their first meeting yesterday. And apparently, they had seats set up for everybody that was on that board. And that piece of legislation, it says who's on there, and none of the governor's nominees or governor's positions that were on that task force showed up to it. And the co-chair of that, Senator Brown from Wilmington, really had some choice words.
He had some opinions.
He did.
He was hilarious. I'm sorry. His responses were pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, Delaware Public Media had a really good article about it, and there was some inside baseball in there as well. Talking about an egg timer. Yeah.
For those that don't know, Governor Meyer, whenever he wants to meet with a legislator, he allots 10 or 15 minutes and he sets a timer.
Yeah, so when we first had our initial meetings with him actually this was before he was governor during the transition. Called you in, and then there was a timer there. They set it for 10 minutes.
Yes.
And we had a couple members of our caucus that tried to go together to get 20
They
minutes.
get 20 minutes.
And they got 20 minutes between the two of them, so.
No, they got 10
minutes
minutes between
minutes.
the two of them.
Yeah, 10 minutes. So that's kind of, I don't want to say it's a running joke amongst the General Assembly, but there was actually a little bit of tongue-in-cheek talk about setting a 10-minute timer during a State of the State address.
Yeah, we were disappointed that didn't happen.
Yeah, having everybody's phone go off at the same time.
Well, I was excited when I first brought that idea forth.
That was your idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
And rumor has it, many people are saying that word did get over to the other side of the aisle, and they were considering it as well. But then nobody did it.
And nobody did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would have been funny.
Well, it's
Would've
because
been
we
great
wanted to be
content.
professional, I think. And
Yeah.
So, and there's, there was some back and forth with the, about this, and, the governor's statement was there's only one port board, and that board is focused on expanding our existing port. Unfortunately, there's an attempt to make a second port board, and look, the executive and the legislative branches have got to work together to do things.
Right.
And there's hesitation, and I'm not sure where all this is coming from. I mean, the animosity right now puts a lot of us in the General Assembly that want to move Delaware forward, regardless of the branch, regardless of whatever, there's a lot of things that have to move forward right now. And we just kind of sit back and shake our heads that, folks that are adults that should be, looking to work together as co-equal branches of government aren't doing that right now. And
it's a power struggle. It's a power struggle that I've not seen before. I've always, in my 10 years here, everyone has always been able to come together and work together when needed.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a shift in that. It's not happening. It's a power struggle.
Yeah.
And I was happy to see, too, that Senator Brown had mentioned the cursing in press releases, because I had mentioned that a couple episodes ago. I just
He
think
must listen to our podcast.
Hey, I bet
Probably
he does.
does,
Hey, come on to our podcast as a guest.
We should see if he wants to come on sometime.
No,
He'd
but
probably
it's
like that.
but I agree with him. He cursed during the State of the State, and I just think for me personally, I think it's a bad look. I think it's unprofessional, and I think it's not needed.
Yeah.
And it's not cool. I just want to put that out there. If you think it's cool, it's not.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens as this goes forward. I believe, look, the Port of Wilmington is a huge driver, an economic driver to the state of Delaware and regionally. The expansion of the port, right now the current port is off the Christina River. The new port is going to be right on the Delaware River, which will allow
Is that Edgemore?
Yeah,
Yep.
Which will allow some much larger ships
Yes.
to be able to come in and be offloaded or onloaded out of Delaware.
It would be good for Delaware.
It'd be really good. It'd be a lot of great jobs up there. Speaking of jobs, don't let me forget about Merck too.
You can transition into that whenever you like.
Yeah. So, it'd be a lot of great jobs, and, that's something that really needs to happen. And there's been a lot of bipartisan support for the expansion of that port. So, So, Jobs.
Yes, you text us that.
I did. There was a Wall Street Journal article earlier on this week that, and I haven't seen a press release.
I haven't seen anything
MoGov yet.
reporting in Delaware yet.
Yeah. So they're Merck, which is a big pharmaceutical company. They actually have a facility down in Millsboro as well for animal health.
Yep.
But they do a lot of manufacturing. They do a cancer drug right now. I can't remember the name of it. Was it Keytruda, was it?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. But there is a very successful cancer drug that they do. I think it's a biologic that is being manufactured over in Ireland right now. Well, they have made the decision for a number of reasons, but one of the things that was cited is because of tariffs to onshore the production of that drug. They're doing they've got a new formulation that allows, instead of intravenous administration, you can do it, through regular intramuscular or whatever. So you don't need to sit and have it done that way. But they're going to be manufacturing that out in their complex that they have outside of Wilmington right now. So $1 billion investment.
It is Keytruda.
It is Keytruda. Okay. $1 billion investment in Delaware in the plant. 4,000 construction jobs and then 500 permanent jobs.
And they did attribute that to tariffs.
And they did. In the Wall Street Journal article, it said that tariffs were one of the reasons why they're doing it. So,
Well, it looks like you're hearing it here first, because I've not seen it reported anywhere in Delaware.
yeah, and like I said, I don't think I saw a press release from the Office of the Governor about it, but he was there with the groundbreaking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he'll mention it next time he's in Washington, D.C. doing a national show.
Maybe.
Yeah. Seems to be a weekly thing.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. There.
I'm just waiting for him to be sitting on the steps of the Capitol, breaking out in song with the rest of them.
Anyway, yeah. So mean that's I mean again that's good news for Delaware too.
Yeah.
But again, in the Wall Street Journal article, it said that tariffs were one of the reasons. So and
Because I think are you a supporter of tariffs? And what do the two of you think?
We want to get into this.
Just quickly.
So
I'm going to admit
So my thing with tariffs, I'm not a fan of how it was rolled out initially. And in general, I am more pro free market. If tariffs are used to get a better trade deal or to for national security purpose, obviously help. Anyway, I think I'm pro use of them then, which is really how President Trump in his first term utilized them. And really in the first couple weeks of this term, you saw Mexico and Canada came to the table about increasing their border security and fighting the flow of fentanyl into the United States. So I think from that angle, I am. But when you start implementing these high tariffs in the manner that they were, I mean, you saw the effects of the stock market and things like that, which affects people's 401ks and the retirement plans.
Right.
It's not just, argument. A lot of people on our side were saying, well, just people, the only folks who invest in the stock market are wealthy individuals. It's like, well, it's not exactly true. It's because a lot of people, their retirements are tied to that. Anyway, say all that to say, to answer your question, I support them if done in a strategic sense. If it's just a blanket
not in
tariff,
a punitive sense.
Right.
My sense is...
And see, I'm complete opposite. I would support it more as a punitive action.
Well, I think it should be equal.
Yeah.
Let's say if Canada was charging us 30% tariffs on American goods, okay, we're going to charge 30% tariffs on Canadian goods.
reciprocal.
Yeah, reciprocal.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And if they don't like that, then they can come to the table and reduce the tariffs on American goods. Doing it, as punitive for the fentanyl, for the illegal drugs and the immigration that the illegal immigration that's been happening. Using that as a tool in the toolbox, not the only tool, but a tool in the toolbox. Again, strategically and surgically, I think is good. But as in general terms. I don't like it when we're not charging tariffs on countries that are charging, high tariffs on American goods. That's weakening our position. That's saying, okay, again, we are the piggy bank of the world. We'll go ahead and pay American dollars to help your economy, to help your government through your tariffs, at the same time hurting Americans in what we're buying. So, I'd like a world where we didn't have to have tariffs.
Right.
Or tariffs applied equally everywhere, to help fund the government, especially if it was going to result in, things like personal income tax reductions.
But that has to get through Congress,
but those have to get through Congress.
And I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
I mean, it might get through the House, but the Senate with cloture, I don't know if they would be able to get that through there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right, just a little side note there on tariffs. But so, what were we talking about before tariffs? Do we need to circle back before I hit this last item I've got?
What were we talking about? I mean, we went from electric
We got
vehicles,
sidetracked.
electric vehicles to
We've been
the
all
port,
over the
to
place.
jobs.
Yes.
Yeah,
To singing on the steps of the Capitol.
singing in the steps in the Capitol. Yeah.
Yeah, can we? How insane do these people look?
Pretty insane.
Like,
I don't know the reason why. I mean, I always look for a reason why. What's the end game? What's the plan? What's the strategy? Because I'm a strategic person, right? So I'm looking for not necessarily the tactical advantage, but the whole strategic advantage. I don't know what the advantage of doing this is. I don't know what the end game is. I don't know what it gets them. I don't know.
Well,
what
we
it gains
know
them.
it's not to try to look cool. That's for sure.
yeah. Well, he had Senator Booker, who
I
it
know.
seems like has been leading the charge.
He
Senator
has.
from New Jersey. He had his
He started
filibuster
yes.
a couple weeks ago, which literally everybody has forgotten about. By the way,
Right.
you
And
had
I'm pretty
like,
sure wasn't he one of the ones that went on and on about how
Oh,
the
it's Jim
filibuster
Crow
should
2.0.
be. Yeah, we don't need the filibuster, but then used it.
well, and now him and Representative Hakeem Jeffries, had their sit-in,
Yes.
which again, outside of the funny memes that have come out, nobody paid attention to it.
Yeah.
I really don't, like you said,
The
Senator,
memes have been funny. I
they
gotta
have
say.
been.
Yeah, they
I really don't know what the end game is. If it's just to raise awareness or to fight back against President Trump's
Yeah,
administration,
I think
well,
feel they think they're the opposition. That's what it is.
I've
so we
always
should
been-
stage our own sit-in. on the Capitol
No,
steps.
we will not. Well, ours will not look like that. Let's just put it like that.
Start countering with competing policies.
Yeah.
With well thought out, researched policy.
Right.
Don't just sit and sing.
Everyone plays to social media today, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I think
it's
they-
easier to just sit on the steps and let's have some photo ops and video that we can put out on social
They'll get
media,
their clips.
rather than actually getting to work and making a difference. That's what's happening.
And that's a bad way to govern. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that want to do those things as members of a legislature, whether it's a national or state or sometimes even local lawmaking bodies. They want to do those things, and we're not elected to make a public spectacle. We're elected to make laws, to debate them, to
govern.
And that's not governing to me.
Yep.
But
It is not.
no.
All right. Well, great episode, great break. Deanna, her cough is starting to come back. So,
Yeah. So we're gonna
cut it
end
short.
it here, but there are some things. I mean, we want to talk about Senate Bill 116 next week.
Yes.
That's an important bill, and I'm sure as the pre-file comes, there's going to be some additional bills that are released that we're going to be looking at over the next week and discussing them as well as whatever happens legislative wise next week when we get back. So
Also,
Just
because
the
we got a
agenda.
tick on the table. Look at that.
a tick.
Yeah.
Where'd that thing come from?
I don't know. We had another
Oh,
guest.
It's got blood in
yeah,
there. So
it was sucking on one of us.
Uh oh. Yeah.
We had a special guest and we
There
didn't
you
even
go.
know it. Look at that.
all right. Well, good episode, everybody, and Deanna, I hope you feel better.
Yeah. Thank you. I think next week's episode will be a little longer.
Yeah.
A lot to cover.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds great. See ya.